Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Utah Story Show. We have a very exciting program. On the program today, we have Eric Mustos, who is the Utah Business Revival leader, and they been putting on these demonstrations, and they're very positive. They're very great demonstrations for Utah businesses in getting them back open. And it's interesting, we did a little segment on Eric's group and what they were trying to do with it, putting on a concert. The concert was going to be the same day that the riot happened in downtown Salt Lake and the big demonstration happened. He was given a court order to cease and desist, stop the whole operation of putting a concert on that was going to practice social distancing, everything you find at a Costco or a Walmart. They were going to be safe and put on a nice concert to benefit Utah businesses. That was told you must not do it by court order, but at the same time, the big demonstration was able to happen in downtown Salt Lake City, and we all saw the terrible repercussions of that. A police car turned over, another car turned over and burned. Rioters, we're told that there was a pallet laid out of bricks. Luckily, it didn't get more ugly, but a ton of thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage, and that was allowed to happen. But Eric's very peaceful demonstration with a country music star, not allowed to happen. So it's just hypocrisy in action, and Eric's going to be on the program to talk about that. I'm really excited to have him on. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef. If you have not tried pasture-raised beef yet, you absolutely need to go and try Canyon Meadows. Their ranch is located in eastern Utah in beautiful Altamont. Visit cmrbeef.com to stock up on ground beef, roasts, and steaks. They're all local. They have pickup locations throughout Salt Lake City, including a lot of farmers markets, the downtown Salt Lake City Farmers Market and Park Silly Market. If you don't know the difference between factory farm beef and pasture-raised beef, you absolutely need to taste it. You can go to their website and you can choose your own package of steaks, ribs, ground beefs, or roasts. I like to buy a whole half a cow. You get a really great rate that way. I've personally used Canyon Meadows meat to supply all my backyard barbecues for 3 years now, and I am never going back to factory farmed. I'm constantly blown away with how tender, delicious. It's far more nutritious. Read about it. Learn about pasture-raised beef. It is good for the earth, and it is delicious in flavor. Visit cmrbeef.com and use offer code UTStories to get a special discount for all of our listeners. Okay. Yeah, Eric, so thanks a lot for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So when you were trying to organize this concert, and then at the same day, you watched this massive demonstration happen, sanctioned by the city and by the police department. Did it strike you as being quite strange that they'd allow one but not the other?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now we live in a society of inverse morality, where good is evil and evil is good. That's what's happening right now. And to go further, in Kaysville, so we actually started this concert in Kaysville, Utah. I contacted Mayor Katie Witt. She said, yeah, let's do it. Great idea. She contacted all 5 of her city council. They all 5 bought into the idea, said, let's do it. As soon as the announcement, the press release went out, all 5 of her city council turned on her. And so we had to move it from Kaysville, and we were still going to go forward, but they threatened to turn on the sprinklers on us. Mm-hmm. They threatened to cut power out of Barnes Park in Kaysville. And so we had to move it then to Tooele. Once we got to Tooele, on a private property, by the way, in an amphitheater that holds 10,000 people, that's when County Commissioner Sean Milne stepped in, and they got the county attorney to file an injunction with the judge. The judge then issues an injunction that we will cause irreparable harm to all of Utah, that we're going to kill everybody because we're doing this outdoor event. Come to find out, during the hearing, I get a text message. Tooele County is holding a BMX event where it's sanctioned by Tooele County. Thousands of people have gathered. There's vendors at Tooele County facility, so they're making the money there at the exact same time we were going to have that concert that night.
Really?
And oh yeah, and so then the next day I did since it was then shut down by the judge, I was still going to go forward with it, but the property owner decided not to.
Yeah, I
I
was
did a call
really
to
reading
action.
closely the entire story because I strongly believe that the economic repercussions, and I've been saying this for months now, are far worse than the virus itself. And if we do not support our small, independent local businesses, many of them that are less than 50 employees are going to suffer a blow they just simply can't recover from, and it's going to be a huge, terrible impact on our communities. Especially, is that kind of the impetus of what's got you started, or how did you get this whole concept
Oh,
started?
yeah, 100%. I saw the very beginning, and I'm a former police officer. I worked for Salt Lake City Police for 7 years, and I saw the government overreach, the unconstitutional color codes, just because Utah didn't get it as bad as New York, or being in other words, being the best of the worst is not good enough. We failed as a state of Utah. Our officials, Governor Herbert, Spencer Cox, in particular, they failed us in so many ways because they don't understand the proper role of government. The health department failed us, and so that's the silver lining, is that we're waking up. But people don't understand. Every 1% of unemployment, you can look it up right now. Just look up
I know what you're about to say. Yeah,
deaths of despair,
yeah,
unemployment. Every 1% equates to 34,000 deaths over a 6-year period, between suicide, between heart attack, alcohol, problems. And so if we're at 30% unemployment, which we're right around, think how many deaths that's going to be. Plus, we're still going to have COVID. So that's what I've been pushing the whole time. So I had a vision that we were going to just go to parks, and we were going to invite thousands of people to come to these parks, and businesses were just going to show up and set up their goods, and we're going to help them. And so our first rally that we did was against the snitch line in Salt Lake City, because all my buddies from Salt Lake called me and said, Eric, there's a snitch line. Mayor Mendenhall and Mayor Wilson, they put up a snitch line if you're not social distancing. So they were going on all these calls, going to neighbor saying, hey, guys got to get away from each other. And that's unacceptable. So that was my first rally. We had several thousand people there. And we purchased food from local businesses and had a picnic on Mendenhall's city and county building. And that was kind of the start of it. And then our next one, we went to, I contacted Mayor Julie Fulmer from Vineyard, and we had 5,000 people show up to that one. And we had 65 businesses show up for free.
That's awesome.
And we helped all those small businesses. And,
they were all food vendors, or what kind of businesses were they?
No, we had probably 7 or 8 food vendors, food trucks. And then we had the rest were just small businesses that needed help. And so we shopped. We had 22 Utah elected officials show up. And that was our second one. And then it was just a battle to finally get this Colin Ray concert off the ground. And we finally made it happen in Iron County, Cedar City.
So it actually will you put it on?
Oh yeah. Oh, it was amazing.
That's good to hear.
Oh,
I didn't see. I was following all the Tribune newspaper stories about it, and it seemed to just fall off after the.
Of course.
After the riot happened the same day.
They don't want to report that, but we had over 5,000 people show up in Cedar City, and we had the first concert since COVID.
That's awesome.
It was an amazing event. We had right around 100 booths show up from all over the state of Utah.
Oh, that's so great.
And so that's what we've been doing. So now we're getting ready to do our 4th of July event.
That's so great. We spun out 5 years ago. My wife ditched her physics career and started the Made in Utah festivals. And normally we would put on 3 festivals, but because we get all the permitting in place and the off-duty police officers, EMT, porta potty, I mean, it's so many logistics. We couldn't get our permits. And so we're not doing our festivals like we normally would. We're hoping to do one in October. But the way you're doing it, you're just saying show up, no
That's
costs. Right. It's a park. It's a public place.
Yep,
that didn't dawn on us that we could do something like that. So I'm super glad you're out there doing it.
Yeah, and that's my point, is that we're the ones that are supposed to be in charge. And so I hope this wakes everybody up to say, who should have this power? Do the health department, should they really have this power? And who does it belong to? And so that's what I'm hoping, is that it wakes people up to realize that we have some very nasty, government is way too involved in our lives, way, way, way too involved in our lives. And we've seen the worst of it. And I really truly fear for our future, because um, it's almost like the solar flare has erupted, and we looked up and we saw the big solar flare, but we haven't even felt the heat yet. We haven't even felt what's about to happen, and that's what I fear.
Well, and I think people should understand, why is freedom of assembly a part of our First Amendment? And if we're basically told we can't assemble as a group, and the government's mandating that, then they have the power to essentially say that we're not going to allow an organized group who has a beef with the government to assemble. And it seems like, in that regard, they're picking winners and losers too. Of course, they like the Black Lives Matter assembly, so they're going to allow that to happen because it's timely, and of course, criminal justice reform needs to happen. But if they're not going to allow a business revival group that simply wants to restart our economy, it's like, what comes next?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if it can happen with COVID, it can happen with anything. And if we're just going to lay down and roll over and just give up, it's over anyway. And so in order to keep your right, in order to have a right, it is my right. We don't have collective rights. We have individual rights. It is my right as a father and a provider to run my business the way that I want to run it. It is my right to reach over and shake your hand, and under any circumstance. It's my right to come out of my house. It's my right to wear a mask. It's a business owner's right to say you have to wear masks, but it also should be a business owner's right to say you don't have to wear masks, and then let the people choose. And that's it. But
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that this overreach, it's out of control. And just because Utah is a little bit better than some of these other crazy states, it's not good enough. It's not good enough for liberty and freedom. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I look at the media setting and the way the media is covering this, and I always thought that the media's job was to deliver the facts, which allow people to determine their own risk assessment. What sort of risk do you want to take on every day when you go out? And what I see happening is that while every single day the giant headline is this many more COVID cases, this is awful, this many more COVID cases across the country, and then they don't talk about who's actually dying. That's still a mystery to me. I've been trying to figure out, okay, 140 deaths in Utah. Our death rate as a nation, we know, has not increased. These 140 people who have died, the unfortunate thing is the vast majority of them are over the age of 65, and the vast majority of them have pre-existing conditions, and a huge majority of them live in long-term care facilities. And my big question is, why aren't they delivering that information? Why are they holding it back? Why can't we make our own risk assessment? Are we too dumb now to be able to decide for ourselves what is safe and what's unsafe? I just don't get this whole nanny state operation with both the media and the government right now.
Yeah, and clearly it's kind of baked in the cake, and it's been going this way for a long time. And in our schools, we don't, what school teaches the Constitution like it should? What school teaches you about our rights? What school, especially in college now, aren't basically shaming you for having white skin? I mean, that's what's happening. And it's like, look, we're talking about experience, right? And I say these things respectfully because, yeah, sure, there are some racists in our country. Sure, there's always going to be. But I ask a question: is the United States of America racist? I would argue we are the most diverse country in the world. We elected a black president 2 times, not once but twice. When I was 8 to 12 years old, I had Michael Jordan on my wall, and I'm just this white kid in this bubble, Utah. Ozzie Smith was on my wall.
Yeah.
When I was a Salt Lake police officer, I never heard a racial slur, not once. In 7 years did I hear a racial slur. But somehow this narrative that we are still this awfully horrible racist country, it is one of the most disturbing lies since the response of COVID lie. And I mean that. It is such a lie. Eric Holder, in the Obama administration, he did a full investigation on the Ferguson Police Department, full investigation. Hundreds of agents. They went through thousands of emails, thousands of text messages, conversations, anything to try to find any kind of, racial, systematic, whatever. They found zero evidence of it, and so I would argue we are nowhere near what the media is trying to say that we are. But for some reason, it's hook, line, and sinker, and all these corporations are jumping on, and we have to be very, very, very careful, because these organizations, if you look at it, for example, if you go look at Black Lives Matter web page, where's all that money going? Well, if you follow the money, it goes to a place called Act Blue. Well, what's Act Blue? Act Blue is a democratic platform to fund people like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. So really, all this money that is being filtered through Black Lives Matter are going to white elites that are not helping the black community. I think they get 4% of that money. It's unbelievable how this is happening so quickly, and that we're just all buying into it and not questioning it. If you question it, you're racist.
Yeah.
If you say things like, "Hey, what about all lives? What about all lives mattering?" You're racist.
And you can get deplatformed on Twitter for writing "All Lives Matter." It's now a thing where that's considered hate speech. And as we move into this this politically correct manner that everybody has to abide by, if that's not the removal of our First Amendment, then what is? I mean, if you no longer have the right to simply say, absolutely, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. How about victims of sex trafficking? Those lives matter. How about kids neglected by parents who killed themselves because the economy was so terrible? Those lives matter. How about all sorts of people who are trying to come in this country legally and find the economic opportunity that are all sorts of different colors of skin from different countries and creeds? Those lives matter. It's just to say that my wife actually made a really good point about this. She's from Eastern Europe. She's from Bosnia. She said, if somebody said something, just some statement, something like, Bosnians are smart, then it works under the assumption that Bosnians are stupid. So to say a blanket statement about something that is of course obvious, we as you said, we all worship athletes and musicians, and you cannot say in our country we have any sort of athletic culture or pop culture without the Black lives being a big part of it. It just doesn't exist. Of course they matter, and we worship these people. And I think you're right. It's just, I think these kids who are following this, I went to the Ben Shapiro protest when he came and spoke, and Black Lives Matter showed up to protest him. It's these white kids who've been indoctrinated that they should feel this great sense of shame and guilt because they are white, that this whole system is oppressive and it's undermined so many minorities and it's ruined this whole continent.
When I was in ninth grade, I wanted to join a group called, I heard about this group that they were paying students for their grades. And so I went in and I said, I want to join this group. You get like $20 an A, $16 a B, all the way down. And so I wanted to join this group. And as I was like filling it out after school, the teacher came to me. He was this Asian teacher, great guy. He was an Asian math teacher, and he said, Eric, I got to tell you that you can't be a part of this group. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, because you're not a female and you're not a minority. I didn't even know I didn't even know what the minority. I didn't even know what minority meant at that point. You know, uh, I was so taken back, but I could not join the group because I was white, and so I was removed out of the group. That was my first experience. We talk about experience. That was my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the police department, and you can read this in my book because I wrote a book. If you go to my webpage, it's ericmoutsos.com, and my book's free. If you just want to read it straight from my webpage, you can also get it on Amazon. It's called Dispatched.
Cool. Check that out.
Because the politics of the Salt Lake City Police Department are disgusting. And that's ultimately the reason why I got out, because I was calling them out on quotas. You know, we had to arrest on the bike squad, we had to arrest 5 people per day. When I went over to the motorcycle unit, and these are the things that need to be reformed, by the way. And I can talk about that, about what the true nature of what I believe would completely change the police and the public's relationship. And then that's where my career started going downhill. And then in 2014, my department asked 5 of us, no, not asked. They told 5 of us that we were going to come in on our off time and we were going to celebrate in the LGBT parade in our uniforms. And so I traded spots with another cop. I said, hey, will you be in the parade and I'll do your security spot? I said, I don't feel comfortable being in the actual, they wanted us to lead the parade in our uniforms. And he said, yeah, no problem. So we switched spots. And within a couple days, I could see that it was an email came down saying no trading spot. So I had to write this email up the chain saying, hey, look, I love all people. I love gay people. I said, if this was an abortion parade, I would ask not to be in it. And so they ended up taking my badge and my gun for discrimination, just for voicing that I didn't feel comfortable being in a parade. And I told them that the police should not be in somebody's speech. It's very dangerous when you get the police in someone's speech, because now what is it that you're saying? You're using the government to force your quote unquote religion or your idea. And that's the whole reason why the founders left in the first place. So going back.
Well, you're a public official who's not supposed to be based at all in a political manner.
That's right.
I mean, that's a political stance. Why would they force you? Now, I mean,
Because
you take away whatever movement it might be. Why would they force you to march in a parade taking a political stand on something? Yeah, you're absolutely right. That doesn't make any sense.
I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If they had a temple parade, I would feel very uncomfortable, especially if they force the police to be in the temple parade.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you say, hey, I don't feel comfortable being in the temple parade. I would say, absolutely, you have the right. But because I voiced that, I am on the same level as a racist because I didn't want to be in the LGBT gay parade. And even though I love those people, it was against my conscience. And they took my badge and I lost my career. And it was one of the worst things that's ever happened to us. However, it's become one of the best things because I've been able to overcome and find myself on a whole deeper level. But that's, I kind of now forgot where I was going with that.
Well, let's get our viewers and watchers up to date. So that was 2014.
That's right.
You started writing a book right after that, and how have you been earning your income, and what have you been doing?
Oh, I've been in the solar industry for about 4 years now, and so I tried getting onto some corporations, and they would just Google my name, and that was it. And so I moved down to Southern Utah, which is beautiful. And that's what I've been doing is in the sales world, and I'm glad to be out, especially now seeing what's happening to law enforcement. These officers are getting attacked every which way, and the problem is not racism. I'm telling you right now, it's, if anything, it's the way, and I have an issue right now of even talking about police reform, because I do not believe we should even be entertaining the idea on reforming anything at direction of anarchists and direction of Marxists.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah, let's get into that. I am just $1 billion was taken away from the police force's budget of New York City yesterday that passed. What do you see happening to the police forces or the cities, better question, of Minneapolis and New York defunding these police operations? I mean,
This is very, very strategic from these people. And they know if they can go after police departments and if they can go after that thin blue line, it's over. Meaning these people who think that they're anarchists and that we're going to have no law, they're setting up cities like Chaz, and they have kings, the king of Chaz. And
you see what happens with Chaz. 4 shootings in a few days, and businesses are now going to file federal lawsuits because they couldn't operate. Of course, it's going to just reduce everything to anarchy, and it's going to be awful. How could they see it any other way? Is what I don't understand.
But here's the plan, and this is what people don't understand. They're calling for no police, and what's going to have to happen is now the military is going to have to step in, and the military are on completely separate game of rules of the game. They are not trained to de-escalate. They're not going to go in and grab your ID and dance around and play the game. They do not operate like that. And the people that are, the puppet string people that are paying these people to protest, I mean, the big, deep money people that are trying to crush the United States, they know they are using these people. They are using Black Lives Matter to completely crumble America as we know it.
Why would they want to do that, though? I don't get them.
Because they want a world order. They don't want the United States to be operating the way it operates. They want to crash the dollar. And so that's why. It's real simple. I mean, it's to them, this is very, very, very strategic. And you do it on the false premise that we're a racist. And then we are going to now be in these civil wars. The military is going to have to step in, and we're going to be fighting each other. And it's going to happen that quickly.
Boy, I sure hope you're wrong. That would be
me too. But that's what's going to happen. I mean,
but it does feel like it does almost feel like that there are much greater forces at work here, and these people who've been sort of indoctrinated to believe, we need to go and we need to riot, we need to cause civil unrest, and all the people who feel like they're being social justice warriors by going to these protests. It so feels like that they are being used as pawns. And when I interviewed a few of these people at the Ben Shapiro rally at the U, they have no idea who Ben Shapiro is. They have no idea why they're there. They're just, I got this sign and I hate this guy. He's terrible.
Ben Shapiro would actually be protecting them more than anyone. It's like Ben Shapiro's like one of the biggest freedom fighters in the world. I mean,
he's an Orthodox Jew, and he's being called a white supremacist. I mean, he's the antithesis of a white supremacist. He's every white supremacist's greatest nemesis, and he's being called a white. It's just like they have no idea what they're there for. And
that's right. They're being used. The point is they're being used, and then all the people that are turning their social medias black, they have no clue what they're doing, and they're setting up for an absolute disaster. And once these police officers just start, I mean, they're already starting to resign big time in these big cities. Atlanta, there was like 24 of them that just resigned. In Salt Lake City, there's 7 of them. 7 police officers have resigned, and they're on a hiring freeze. And so who are you going to call? And that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that we're going to be in a civil war within the next, by November, especially if Trump wins, because they're going to riot 10 times harder. And that's my biggest fear.
Well, that's the thing. These protests, they're not going away. They're very, very consistent, and they keep having them. And luckily, there's been no more riots in Salt Lake, and I honestly have stopped not watching the news every night, so I don't even know what's happening in places like Minneapolis, Atlanta, New York, and LA anymore. Is it still riots still happening in those places, or is it calmed down?
Yeah, no, it's just they are still happening, but it's just not the media doesn't want to show the violence. The media doesn't want to show that these people look. if the Black Lives Matter webpage popped up a thing that said we are against violence, I would take them a little tiny bit more seriously, that they mean that they're wanting peace and justice. But I do not believe that's really what the leaders want. I do believe that most people that have bought into this, they want peace, but they don't realize that the people pushing the needle are complete anti-American. They do not want the United States to operate the United States.
Well,
how
what's
we operate.
interesting, I heard an interview with the leader of the Salt Lake City chapter of Black Lives Matter the day after the riots, and she said, in no uncertain terms, we do not condone violence. We did not condone the tipping over the police car, or any sort of looting or defacement of public property. She said that.
That's good.
Which I was proud that, happy that she said that.
Well, that's good. It's going
but-
to take a lot more of her.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they separated themselves from those actions. But I wonder, so this has been a question I've had ongoing for a while. We examined those riots, so-called, the demonstration that happened on Saturday and where the police car was turned over. The demonstrators were moving down State Street. They turned the corner up 400 South. And according to a person I spoke to, the officer left his cruiser there. There was nobody causing any problems. He left his cruiser there, just abandoned it, and there was no police anywhere near there. Is that standard procedure for an officer just to leave his cruiser in the pathway of a moving demonstration where they could easily just, oh wow, there it is. We have a perfect way to vent our frustration.
Is that the one that burnt?
Yeah.
Well, number one, it was a female, an Asian female, which is just more ironic. And I don't know. What I'm trying to tell you is I don't know the exact details, but I do know that she was very afraid of her safety. So I don't know all the details.
Okay.
But what I do know is that it took the Salt Lake City Police Department over 3 hours to respond properly. They sat there for 3 hours and watched this happen.
Yeah.
And then threw their lower command staff under the bus for them not taking action.
Okay.
And what I believe happened is that the mayor of Salt Lake City and the police chief of Salt Lake City, they allowed room for destruction. That's what I believe. Now, I don't think they knew exactly how violent it was going to get, but they allowed that to happen. And they did that when I was there. They did that with Occupy Wall Street years ago. They allowed those people to come in Pioneer Park and set up those tents against the law, and let them do it. And then pretty soon someone died, and then of course then you got to come in and you're the bad guy. And what these city administrators and city mayors, what they don't realize is that these people will not stop at anything. When we did our blue rally, we did a big police blue rally a couple weeks ago. That same group were surrounding Mayor Mendenhall's, and I don't know if it was the Black Lives Matter or if it was Utah's Against Police Brutality. They were surrounding Mayor Mendenhall's house, her personal house. And they don't realize that these people will stop at nothing, and they're never going to be satisfied, and they're going to end up eating them alive. They're going to get rid of police, and who's going to protect them? I remember when Mayor Becker was the mayor when I was a cop, and he had his little bicycle stolen from the city and county building. And the amount of times that man called the chief to try to find his bike, it was unbelievable. So we had like operations to try to find this bike. We finally found his stupid bike. But it was the resources. What are we going to do? And a lot of people don't know this either, but just weeks before this whole defund the police, came, the city council were begging the police department to hire more cops because
That's
they were
what I
having
thought.
problems.
All I was hearing about was hire more cops in the last.
That's right. But
year and a
because
half.
the political change happened and all these constituents were calling, we got to defund. Okay. But now, in these bigger cities, these Democratic run bigger cities, they're now hiring personal security guards, these city councils. So it's like, you guys, they want their cake and eat it too, and they can't do it. And they're going to end up eating them alive. I mean, this is going to be Gotham City it's playing out. Gotham City is becoming alive.
Well,
I mean,
and it reminds me of what I've heard about Mexico City. All the wealthy are able to hire their own personal security details. Everybody's living in a gated community. Everybody
mhm.
who has the money has a safe room and has a gate, has a way to protect themselves if armed militia, or, armed cartel come in or whatever. It would be really sad if that's the way we go here.
The biggest problem in law enforcement, I'm telling you right now, is the stats. If you want to talk about reform, this is what you talk about. When you get into it as a cop, you want to serve and protect, and then when you finally jump in the system, you realize that it's all about numbers and money, whether they want to admit it or not, whether they think it is or not.
Hmm.
How, in order to judge you, in order to like look at your, if you put in for a position, the very first thing they look at is what are his stats. They look at your arrests, they look at your stops, they look at your tickets, they look at your contact. And so if you're a hard driver and you want to like move around in the police department and advance your career, all you're doing is stopping people all day long.
Really?
And I got caught up in that game because I didn't realize what was actually happening. And then when they put an actual number on me, and you can go to my YouTube channel, I recorded my sergeant with the 5 misdemeanor arrests per day. And when I got over to the motorcycle unit, we had to do 20 tickets a day, 20. So
Jeez.
do the math, or 2 DUIs. So we had to get 20 points per day. And so, and what they do is they take those stats. Obviously, they're making a ton of money on all of those tickets. I mean, it's policing for profit. That's what it is. And so my argument is that if you stop doing this, like if you stop pushing these cops that don't want to be doing it, by the way, they don't want to be doing it. In my opinion, the cops need to be more like firemen. Go when you're called to go, but stop picking on people for stupid little infractions, right?
Mhm.
And I was guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm like this perfect. Oh, I called it out. I was doing that, but I just didn't realize it until I opened my eyes and saw, oh my gosh, like this is the problem. Like we are the problem in a lot of ways. If we would just back up and just serve and protect, half of the problems in America would go away with the policing. But when you get a white officer that's posted up in a minority neighborhood, but that white officer has to hit his stats, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? And so
Yeah.
if I was a lawmaker in Utah, in fact, we passed a police quota ban in Utah in 2018, but there was no teeth to it. But I testified on Capitol Hill, and I played my audio, and the Salt Lake Police Department, they came out before I played the audio saying that I was lying. He's not telling the truth, and then I played the audio, and then they shut up, because everybody knows, and they take those stats and they turn those stats into the Fed, and the Fed gives them dollars based on their stats. Do you understand?
Yeah. So
It's
that
gross.
you get, how much of your funding comes from the federal government?
A lot, because they need these grants. I don't know the exact numbers, but a lot.
So it's
of money.
literally based on how many tickets you write, how many misdemeanors,
How many arrests,
how
like
much-
how many domestic violences we have,
how
many
much
this, how
crime
many
is
that.
happening. If there's not
Yes.
enough crime, you don't get enough money.
Yeah, there's not enough supply to meet the demand. So that's the problem in policing. That's the biggest problem that I see, because most cops don't want to be giving tickets. Most cops don't want to do it, but that's now the game. And if you go deeper, prosecutors have quotas, jails, they have to be so full in order to get funding. It's gross. It really is gross, but it's not racism. I'm telling you right now, it is not racism. I'm sure there's a few cops out there that may feel that way, but I never met any. I mean, there's over 500 cops in the Salt Lake City Police Department. I never met any.
So this claim that we suffer as a nation of systemic racism, institutional racism. If you look at the statistic that I believe our prison population is somewhere around, is it 8 million, 8 to 12 million? And about 40% of our prison population is black. I believe that's accurate, if I have it right. What is the reason why so many African American black men are ending up in prison?
Well, two things. The war on drugs, that's a big deal. And though I don't advocate drugs, I don't think they're good for society. I think that we are spending way too much resources and energy trying to stop it. And so I don't know what the answer is there, but there is a full on war that is not going to stop. You're not going to stop behave. It's like trying to stop a bad guy with a gun coming into a place. You're just not going to stop it. 90% of people in prison are not violent, which so I don't know. I truly don't know the answer to it. But what I do know is that we are using way too many resources to try to stop drugs. Now, crack cocaine, that's a big deal, especially in the Black community. And so also with violent crimes, well, I think it's 9%. I could be wrong. 9% of the United States is Black males. Well, why are they committing 45 to 50% of the violent crimes? Well, I believe it's because of fatherless homes.
Yeah.
And it's even President Obama said it. So I'm using his words. When you take the father out of the home, when the government is incentivizing a couple to be separated because you get more money, you're automatically going to have a violent child because the father in the home is so important to teach your child that violence is not the way. And they actually study animals through this. I think there was this, I don't know if it was an elephant. I don't know. I'm getting on a tangent, but without a father, you're more aggressive for whatever way.
Well, this video we put out examining if Ben Shapiro was a racist, the Brookings Institute did a study to find out what the majority of people who live in poverty have in common. And what they found is if you do not graduate from high school, if you have a child out of wedlock, and you don't have a job, it doesn't matter if you're Black or you're white, you're going to be in poverty. It's like straight across the board. It's as endemic to white people as it is to Black people in terms of those criteria. If you don't graduate, if you let's turn it around. If you do graduate, if you don't have a kid out of wedlock, and you have a job, you're not going to be in poverty. Wow, go figure. And that's statistically proven whether you're Black or you're white. But they say that because there are so many impoverished Black people who meet that criteria, we must have institutional racism in this country.
It's so sad. I mean, the richest people in our country are Asians. Well, why? Well, because they know how to work and they know how to stick together. And why are they the richest? Well, they had a horrible time in the United States, a few decades ago, but they were able to pull themselves out. Well, there's a lot of homes that are still put together. There's a lot of mother and fathers that are still together. Yeah. And so I believe that the government, whether they know it or not, they created this problem, and they use the Black community because the Black community, that's a big swing on votes. I mean, that's what, 13%?
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that the next generation, this is why the far left keeps pushing this idea of open borders, because I want to say 60% of new births are Hispanic now in the United States. So they know the Black vote is going to be irrelevant pretty soon. And they'll just, we're done using you. Now we're going to use you. It's so gross. In fact, it's more racist than anything. When I was a cop, they would come to people. The Salt Lake City Police Department would come to people of color. They came to one of my friends who's a Polynesian, and they said, "We need a Polynesian sergeant." Can you think of anything more racist than that?
Just and then because he was a Polynesian, and
that's right. That's right.
He looked like he could wear that uniform.
That's right.
And look the part.
Yeah, that's right. They came to one of our sergeants, female, and they said, "We want you to be part of the motorcycle unit, or we want you to be the sergeant of the motorcycle unit." She said, "Oh no, thank you." They came like a week later. "We want you to be the motorcycle sergeant." Oh no, thank you. I don't want to do it.
I didn't realize that. I guess it makes sense that happens in police too, because
they said you're gonna, so the third time you're gonna be the motorcycle sergeant, and you start Monday. And so she's pissed. So she shows up Monday to go to the motorcycle training, and guess what? Guess who's there? About 8 different news crews. Big headline: first woman Salt Lake City female sergeant. And you know what they did to her? They chewed her up, within about a year, and they spit her out. In fact, she resigned. She retired because they treated her so poorly. Because they're the ones that are actually sexist. They're the ones that are actually racist, using people of color, using minorities, using women. We had a fire, and this is in my book too. That's why you got to get it on my webpage for free. But there was a there was a woman who became a cop. There was a woman that was promoted to deputy chief. So like, there's the chief, and then there's the deputy chiefs, right? Mm-hmm. They brought her in as a deputy chief, and she wasn't even a cop. She had bars on her shirt, she had patches, but she didn't have a badge, and she didn't have a gun. So she had lights and sirens in her car. She was ordering around lieutenants, ordering around sergeants, and everyone was so afraid to say something. And so finally, I called the HR up. And this is 4 months.
You mean she forgot to wear her badge, or what?
How did she didn't have a badge? She was not a Utah police officer, but she got appointed as a deputy chief of the Salt Lake City Police Department. Wow. And so I call HR. I call HR up, and I said, "Hey, this is Officer Mutos. I'm a little nervous to talk to you right now, but I want to express what a lot of people are seeing and feeling, but they're afraid to, and I'm afraid too. But can I just ask you a question?" "Sure, yeah, this is an open door policy." I said, what if the fire department hired a fire chief who's never fought a fire, who doesn't have any fire experience, wouldn't know how to go into a house and save anybody? What would you say? "Oh, well, I'll tell you right now, they would not be qualified. Why? I mean, think about that. How could they do that?" And I said, "I'm really glad you said that, because right now we have a deputy chief of police who's not a cop." And she just sat there. And she's like, "Is that all you have, Officer Mutos?" I said, "Yeah, that's all I have." And that was about 4 months before I lost my badge.
Wow.
And so in other words, they're the ones that use. They're the ones that use people of color. They're the ones that use females, and they use minorities to get all for political gain. And then when they can't do the job, and they may be great, but sometimes they'll hire people that can't actually do the job, and then they end up getting fired. And then what do they sue them for? Racism.
Yeah.
Sexism.
Well, I want to talk more about what people should start doing to prepare for what will happen, in your opinion. And I also want to talk a little bit more about other police departments. We did a 2-year investigation into Cottonwood Heights Police Department. I got to get into that, but I first got to tell you, I got to read tell viewers and watchers about another one of our great advertisers.
Great.
The lakes are open. It's time to get out of the house and rent a jet ski from Action Toy Rental. This summer, rent 2 jet skis for as low as $277 per day. Take your friends and family out to the lake and enjoy a fast set of Yamaha jet skis, and pull somebody on a tube, wakeboard, or water skis. Book them online using coupon code UT2020 to save an additional $40. You don't want to wait till the last minute to make your reservation, because the weekends book up quickly. So go to actiontoyrental.com to see what days are available and book your 2 jet skis for any day you want to go to the lake. Action Toy Rental offers lakeside delivery, or you can pick them up in Salt Lake City and bring them to any lake in Utah. Action Toy Rental is Utah's jet ski rental company. They have an excellent 5-star review from the Wave Runner boat and jet ski renting customers, because they focus on being affordable, flexible, easy to work with, while still providing high-quality, top-of-the-line water sport machines. Go visit Action Toy Rental right now and bring the fun to your next day on the lake. Use coupon code UT2020 when booking online, so you'll get this extra $40 discount, and they'll know that you got there from Utah Stories. So using a police department for political motives is something that I discovered when it took me an actual whole year to write this story. It was one of our biggest investigations. It was based on the claim that a bar owner in Cottonwood Heights was making, that the police department, the new police department of Cottonwood Heights, was being used to put his bar out of business, basically showing up with up to 7 squad cars, pulling over all his customers, as many as they could, on his busiest night of the week, until his Tuesday night just completely died down, and then they showed up on the weekends. They pulled over his customers, and you talk about quotas. Cottonwood Heights, we did a grandma investigation into how many DUIs they were issuing, and we discovered it was 3 times greater than the next highest city per capita.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but
I kind of am.
yeah, it was really intriguing in that I showed up to talk to the mayor, and I said, I'm actually here to talk to the chief of police. I want to talk about these DUIs and why so many of these DUIs were bogus. They were thrown out of court because the people weren't actually blowing above at that time of the .08 limit. And he said, "Well, you are talking to the chief of police. I'm actually the one in charge." And he basically admitted that his chief of police was a puppet, just simply working out his objectives. And I don't know how the Salt Lake City Police Department works, but does the mayor have a ton of power over Chief of Police Mike Brown?
Absolutely. The mayor appoints, and this is why it's so important that we have elections for sheriffs. Why there are police chiefs in this day, I don't understand, because what ends up happening is whatever the mayor. I remember Ralph Becker was very involved in every single decision, and he had the police chief at his fingertips.
Yeah.
And so everything's political, and they're appointed positions. That's why we have to have elected sheriffs, because then the people get to decide what to do, not an appointed mayor who has their political agenda. And so, absolutely, what you're saying, the mayor has a lot to do with the police chief's job.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. You would be elected to be mayor, and then you can then determine criminal justice policy and how
It's gross. It's
how
gross.
you get to use up to. I mean, how many officers are in SLCPD? 100 or
No, there's probably 500. Well, not
Five.
now, but
Wow.
there's a lot. I mean, it's
That's
it's
an
one of the biggest in the
incredible
state.
amount of power.
It is, and it's all political, and they use the police for their political agenda all the time. Just
Yeah.
like the LGBT parade, they pit people against people, and it's like, it's unbelievable. It's like, let us be there to protect this speech, but they want us to get involved and put the colors over the uniform. All the police chiefs wear the rainbow over their uniform, which is against policy.
That's like telling people they got to wear that's just like telling people we're going to have a Mormon parade and you got to wear
That's
your
right.
garments on the outside of your uniform.
That's exactly right.
You're right. That's just such a misuse
okay.
of a
Power.
what's supposed to be an apolitical service agency for the government.
That's exactly right. And then it ends up pitting people against people. Then, like, the people that, don't believe in a lot of things the LGBT community does get pitted against the LGBT community when the politicians get involved, because the politicians now use communities like them for their political agenda. And they're just using people and then pitting people against people. And now we're in this big war because of politicians.
Yeah. And the sad part is, because of the politically correct movement, of course, I love gay people. I've worked with gay people. I attribute a lot of the success of the magazine to the super talented artists I worked with, especially in the beginning, who happened to be homosexual. And I have no qualms at all with gay people. However, I'm a more libertarian-minded person, and I feel like that just my being that way and being outspoken about freedoms and liberty and justice, I think that I've offended some of the gay friends that I've had, and it's kind of sad, because it's not because I enjoy free speech and I enjoy liberty. That should have nothing to do with what the LGBT community has to say or what they're doing. And
you have to realize too, so many people are more on your side of thinking, and so you're just hearing from the really loud ones. But man, when I was all over national news about this thing, I got hundreds of messages from gay people saying, hey, I want to let you know I'm on your side, I'm gay, this is wrong. But it's the militant leaders on that far side that are driving it and driving it. And basically, if you don't agree with everything that I think and every movement that comes, and if you don't agree with this and this and this, you're on the same level as a racist. And it's so dangerous because they have now become the irreligion, right? Because if you think about it, the separation of church and state was never meant to take away religion and our faith and our ideas out of the public square. It was meant so that the government can't force one idea or faith or something on the people, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening. They're using the LGBT community to drive this force, and if you don't agree with it, you don't love. You hate. If you don't agree with it, you hate. When in reality, it's like no. I love you enough to tell you that I disagree with you. And so I'm not pretending. So I love you. And just like 99.9% of the world disagrees with Mormonism, well, that's now, that word is now gone, but they disagree with what I believe. That's okay. You can, some of my best friends, they think that my faith is a total lie. And you know what? We're still best friends. And that's the way it should be.
Exactly. And this idea of civil discourse, which is really what this podcast is all about, that you should be able to sit in front of a person who you completely disagree with and have a civil conversation with that person. Isn't that how progress is actually made? If you're told you cannot say this, you can't say this, you can't go here, you can't go there, and we just basically blanket silence whole areas of debate where we can't go, how does that produce a flourishing civil discourse where we can get over our problems, where we can get over our where we can progress and evolve as a society? I just don't understand.
It can't and it won't. I mean, if you look at I think her name's Martina she's a tennis player, gay tennis player, very
Navratilova,
yeah. Well, she spoke out on the whole transgender in sports and in tennis.
Oh, I
and
remember
the
hearing about that.
LGBT ate her alive. She was one of the biggest advocates in their movement, and they ate her alive. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that nobody wins on that end. They will all eat each other alive because they're not going far enough. And there's no such thing as far enough. It's just going to keep going. I
think you're exactly right, and I always say this. I consider myself more of a liberal when I'm in the city, and I'm a libertarian when I go out in rural areas because I can completely identify with both points of view. I'm a liberal in the city because I like parks, I like bike paths, I like clean air, I like having a transit and rail and all that stuff. But a libertarian when you go outside of it. But these two sides, the divisions between the conservatives and the liberals, it's a growing divide. And what I see happening to the Liberal Party is this virtue signaling social justice warrior movement. They are literally eating each other alive, like you said, because they're just trying to outdo each other in their virtue and the level of virtues they're willing to espouse. I see so many young kids with their cars with the BLM on it, and they're going to these rallies. They think they're doing the very best thing they could possibly do for society at this time. And at the same time, they're ignoring the fact that their civil liberties are being trampled upon. That's not popular.
And they're trying to overthrow agencies, these police agencies. They say it's just about defunding and like moving into, having a counselor show up at a call and all this crap. Some of the worst calls that I've ever seen were on the most just normal routine stops. They think they're going to send counselors to them. Oh my gosh. We are a morally bankrupt society, and we need law and order. We have to have good law and order, meaning like I was saying before, we can't have police going around just trying to ticket everyone, because that just makes everybody upset, and the police don't end up liking it. But we have to have laws.
But how does somebody? So I talked to a guy who had been a police trainer for 30 years. He's now retired. He said to me, that only about 5% of the police officers are doing a really good job and really want to do a really good job. It was kind of sad to hear that. I would assume it's more than that. But he said that it is such a difficult job, and so many people are out there doing it, and they don't have the proper training at all. It's all about de-escalation all the time. But a lot of these recruits, they're all about, oh, I want to carry my gun, and I want to use the taser, and I got all these skills I want to use. Do you think that there is a big problem in properly training officers to be able to deal with all these myriad conflicts they run into every day?
Honestly, we had good training. Like we did all types of training. We had a CIT training, which was I want to say it was like 13 weeks. I mean, it was like the majority of our police training was the critical incident. It was basically, I don't even know if that's what it's called, but the CIT was about mental illness basically, and we would just go on all these calls to see if it was like what was happening. Was it bipolar? Was it schizophrenia? And we knew how to handle it.
Wow.
And so most of the time we knew, like when we got up there, and then we'd look up their record and we knew who we were dealing with and why. But these people were still violent, very violent people.
Well, the homeless people you see out on the street, I mean, a lot of them just look like they're in terrible
and
shape.
They go, and they'll set off in 2 seconds. And so the what I'm trying to say is these young people and these people in these movements, they don't realize that they are going to be trading a very, very small problem. And when I say a small problem, I mean the police. That is a small problem. They're going to be trading that small problem for a 10 times bigger problem when the military has to come and step in on a martial law level. Mm-hmm. That's what these leaders want. They want our system as we know it to crumble, because then they're going to ask for a federal police agency. You really want the feds to become your police? I'm telling you.
So you're now organizing a lot of people, and you've become a leader in this movement to revive businesses. But let's say we defund the police and martial law takes effect. What does the average citizen do? What should everybody be doing?
If you look at the Utah Constitution, we should be a militia anyway. I'm not. You say those words and it scares people. But you and I, we should be properly trained to begin with, as if there were no police. It used to be law a few hundred years ago that you had to have a gun in some parts of the country. You had to. That was the law. But so if you look at the Utah Constitution, it's actually spells out. I don't know exactly where it's at, but it talks about like we should have our own little militias. We should have our own. We should be properly trained to take action. And I fear that's what's going to end up happening if we go into these civil wars, because that's where we're going. Like I truly, we're going. We're going
like a full on civil war, like what we saw in the mid
city against city, state against state. Absolutely. That's what I believe is going to happen. And the riots that you saw, the burnings, that's just the beginning.
Do you think regardless if Donald Trump is reelected, that's going to happen?
Yes and no. Timing. I think if Donald Trump is elected, it's going to speed it up real quick. Short term, it's going to be a lot worse for the United States as far as our safety goes. Long term, if Joe Biden wins, it'll be what'll happen is they're going to do these kind of like emergency, in the executive orders to start taking our rights away, even hardcore, like really hardcore. And so either way, I think we're going to get to that point. I just don't know when. But what's so sad is that we're going to have the same type of a civil war over an issue that's not even real. We had the Civil War, we had the Civil War with Abraham Lincoln and all of that happen over race issues. And I think it's going to be the same issue, but it's not even going to be real.
Well,
I could be wrong.
It's hard to imagine.
I hope I'm wrong.
I do believe we have inflation coming. I've done a couple episodes about that. You can't just simply print $10 trillion and release that in the economy and not expect that prices are going to go up. Of course,
You're
it's going to
exactly right.
happen. As soon as people stop hoarding all the money that they've gotten from the government, and that starts going out in the marketplace, there's no question we're going to have inflation. It just doesn't happen.
You're
either
exactly
way.
right. And so, what I believe is that we need to get ready with our food storage, our families, because if there really is going to be these types of wars in the street, because I really do, I believe in the next several months, we're going to turn on our phone and we're going to be scrolling and we're going to see full on wars in the street. We're going to see guns. We're going to see one side against the other side. I mean, in Provo right now, I got invited to go to this thing today. Somebody sent me a thing saying, "Hey, we're forming a militia to go stand against Antifa in Provo. Will you come?"
Is it the Danites? Danites militia?
I don't know. I'm
That's
trying to
the
look
old
at this
Mormon
guy.
militia that the
I don't
Mormon
know.
church had, and studied that a little bit. But
It's a group called the Utah County Citizens Alarm.
okay,
And
it's
so
not
it's got-
affiliated with the church then.
No.
Okay.
And I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, man, I don't think it's a good idea right now. It's going to raise the levels. At this point, Utah's law enforcement officers haven't experienced what other states have to that degree.
Yeah, and
They
every
are
time there's
still-
been a militia or an armed group of people, it has ended badly. I mean, you look at Waco, then you look at that poor Bundy family. Man, it's just
It's awful, and so it doesn't mean that. So I continue on. I said the Utah law enforcement, they're still on it. It doesn't mean that we can't do it. It's your right to go do that. But to me, timing is everything. If the Utah police fall, right? If we get to a point where there is no thin blue line, of course we have to do it. We have to defend ourselves and our families and get together. But I just don't think we're at that point in Utah. And I hope that we never do get to that point.
yeah. I'm happy that I'm actually happy that Governor Herbert has taken the stand of not mandating the face masks, as he's been pressured by Mayor of Salt Lake County and Mayor of Salt Lake City to do so. He's held that it's a recommendation. He thinks everybody should do it, but he's not mandating it.
It's because he can't. And he knows
Yeah,
that he can't.
I mean, they what Aaron Mendenhall was doing, criminalizing being out after 8 p.m., setting that curfew for a whole week. I saw the flack she got for doing that up on Twitter. Just hundreds and hundreds of vitriolic statements like, you cannot do that. And luckily she pulled it the next day, but it was unbelievable that she thought she had the audacity to think, oh, I could just extend the curfew a whole nother week after the riots, and not understanding you cannot do that. You don't have the authority to do that.
No,
And so
no,
I
they
hope
don't, and they know it. But they're going to keep pushing the needle. Salt Lake City is a very radical leftist organization, and they'll go to all ends to try to lockstep march with places like San Francisco. That's all she does. She just watch it. What are they doing? What are they doing? Snitch line? Let's do a snitch line. With no regard. And these numbers with COVID, I don't even want to get into the numbers, but it's a lie. I'm telling you right now, it is a lie. Yeah, the virus is real, but they are skewing these numbers.
well, Elon Musk said this, so I won't say it myself, but I'll say he said it. When there is an advantage to the tune of about $20,000 to $35,000 for a long-term care facility or a hospital to call something a COVID death, do you think that they're going to not call as many deaths as they possibly can COVID deaths? The federal government gives a grant out to every hospital and long-term care facility for every COVID death. They have a huge financial incentive to call everything a COVID death.
When the dust settles, I believe that they are actually going to see that the flu is more deadly than this, because they're
think so?
using flu and they're using all kinds of deaths as COVID.
Well, our death rate's gone down as a country, not up. I mean, look at
That's
our
right.
overall death rate. If we had a graph last year compared to this year, it's gone down. It's just, I mean, I
It's
know
gross.
people are dying, and I know it's terrible to all the families who've lost people. I don't personally know anybody who's died, and I don't know anybody who knows anybody who's died. And Tyler and I talk about this. It's like, who has died? That I'd like point to one person who didn't have a terrible pre-existing condition or wasn't in a long-term care facility. I'd really like to do a story about it. Who's dying? So if anybody knows, across
The
Facebook
thing
or
is even if
YouTube.
it was, like, even if it really was what they want it to be, we still cannot lose our Constitution and tear it up and shred and
No,
stomp
and
on
our
everyone's
economy.
rights. Even if it really was what they thought, if the numbers were double and they were actually all COVID deaths, we still cannot allow this to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm glad you have the courage, Eric. I'm really glad. It's a very few people who are willing to stand up and say what needs to be said in these days, because you can be, as you've learned already, so severely struck down and ostracized by simply pointing out the obvious truth. And I really appreciate you coming on the program today. Do you know when you're going to be having your next event?
Yeah, 4th of July, we're going to the city of Kaysville, the place that wanted to turn their sprinklers on us on the Colin Ray concert. We're going there at 11, Barnes Park, from 11 to 2, and then we're going to have a water fight there, a water fight for our freedom. And
That sounds great.
hopefully they'll turn their sprinklers on us, and then after that, we're going to go to Orem City Park to watch the fireworks down in that valley. And then if your people listening, they could just go to Utah Business Revival on Facebook and join our group, or utahrevival.com,
For sure.
and see what we're going to do, because I've got a lot planned, but I just haven't announced it. So
Well, we'll tell everybody. We had about 12,000 people come to our last Made in Utah festival, which was last August. We'll post it on our Made in Utah festival page. And how much room do you have for vendors there to set up?
well, this one here, we're not going to do the vendors. We're just going to have a celebration for Independence Day. But our next one after that, we're going to have vendors. But we're trying to look for places. So if we can just get private, if we can just get private property,
Yeah,
we can just get private property.
just find a farm somewhere.
That's right. That's right. And then we can join forces.
Yeah, well, I really like what you're onto here, because we know hundreds of vendors, of small business owners who make products. They work so hard, and they're the lifeblood of our communities. We need to support these people, and I think if we can all band together
Let's do
and
it.
have our own events on private land that doesn't require any permits, and we can all practice the same social distancing measures you have in Costco, but we can support local. I've been saying it for weeks. Let's do it.
It's 18 times better. You're 18 times less likely to contract a virus outside than inside. So we are safer than Costco.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a very good point.
So
Yeah. All right. Well, it's utahbusinessrevival.com, right?
Yep.
Go visit the website, sign up, and if you can, go to the July 4th celebration. I'm going to really try to come to that. I think I've got the morning free. I think that sounds
do.
like a lot of fun. Kaysville
do.
Park.
Yep, it's Barnes Park in
Barnes
Kaysville.
Park, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have some good speakers. We're gonna have the Benson sisters sing. It's gonna be awesome.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, Eric. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, anytime. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. All right, and thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate all the support of this program and the support for local small business that we're seeing. But most importantly, I think we need to support voices of people who are actually willing to speak the truth and come out and say what is actually happening. Because I subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune. I really like a lot of the writers there. They do an incredible job. So no disrespect to all of the amazing journalists out there doing the work, but the way they're not reporting who is dying from COVID and helping people make their own individual risk assessments for how to operate in the economy, it's bothersome. It's like, we should be trusted with the information, and then we should be able to make our own assessment of what we need to be doing. That's what I believe this country is founded on: freedom and liberty and information. And we shouldn't stop the free flow of information. And that's a lot about what this podcast is for. So I want to tell you about the Carpet Barn. They are an independently owned local business. They've been operating in South Salt Lake for over 30 years. Their staff is friendly and helpful, and they have a huge selection of carpet, which, if you're looking to save money, is truly awesome for the price. I just carpeted my basement for with one of their higher end carpets that was $9 a yard. It was far superior to big box carpet, which is I had bought 12 years earlier for $12 a yard. It's a high thread count. It's plush. The kids love it. We go down there, we wrestle, and it's more padded. All around, just a far superior product for a very low price. Go visit them in South Salt Lake and mention Utah Stories. All right. Thank you again for watching. If you will share this program with a friend or somebody you know, that's our main method of getting the message out and growing this program. And if you'll give us a 5-star review on iTunes and subscribe to us through Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play, those are our audio formats. And of course, we're on YouTube, where we have grown a ton, and we've picked up an additional 1,000 subscribers just in the last 6 months, and just 300 in the last month alone. And it's really cool to see, because I did not expect the YouTube platform to be the platform where people are going to watch our podcast, but it's awesome to see that. And if you have any comments on this program, we would love to hear from you. Just leave your comment below. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe to our channel, all that stuff. And most of all, if you want to get more content like this delivered right to your inbox, go to utahstories.com, subscribe to our newsletter. That's really the way we get new advertisers, is by being able to show how many people subscribe to the newsletter. So that's really important to help support this program as well. Special thanks to Tyler Bond, who's in studio helping us today with the technical support. Connie Lewis, who booked Eric on this program, books all of our guests. And Golda Hukic Markosian, who is our digital publisher. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.